Hey, today we have a living legend in the business world with us today. But first, I want to say thank you so much for joining us again on another episode of the Vince Del Monte podcast show, which is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men develop all 5 M's of manhood, which are muscle, mindset, money, mission, and marriage. In each episode, it's our mission to avoid skimming the surface, but to scuba dive and give you simple, no-nonsense insights and takeaways to maximize a few of the 5 M's. And I know today we're going to be going deep on the middle M, money, and I know we'll cover a bit of mission as well. So that's super important, because what we have learned is that when men develop these 5 M's, everyone around them begins to develop them as well. So, hey, just a quick reminder, this podcast is free and it will likely always be free of advertising. I don't see this as a moneymaker, but as a straight up value exchange, an opportunity for me to learn from our guests and for you to learn from other inspiring stories. And with that said, if you could leave this podcast a 5-star rating or review, it would be awesome. And if you could share this on social media and tell your friends, I'd be extremely grateful. Hey, if you're new to the show, I'd go back and listen to the first 5 episodes laying down the 5 M's of manhood so you can really gain further clarity and context to why this show exists and why it's impacting so many lives each and every month. All right, guys, today we are going to introduce you to one of the very first internet marketing giants I met in person. And I will admit, I was intimidated when I met this guy. He's got a very commanding presence. And this was all the way back in 2007 in West Palm, Florida. And I can't even remember how I ended up in this room, but I was invited to what you would call a private closed door mastermind for 10 guys. And it was 10 of the biggest fitness marketers of all time. I was in a room with Ryan Lee, John Benson, Craig Ballantyne, Mike Geary, Jeff Anderson, and a few others. And of course, our guest of today's show, entrepreneur, business advisor, speaker, and best-selling author, Chris Guerriero. And Chris has become known around the world as the go-to business guy for business owners who rely on him when they need an edge or a breakthrough to get through mega obstacles. And I love speaking to guys like Chris because, I'm going to get him to tell us in a second, but I believe he's been doing this for a couple decades. And he's grown teams, culture, business systems that yield multi-million-dollar companies. And during his career devoted to health, wellness, and business growth, Chris has built 4 8-figure businesses of his own and helped generate millions in revenue for his clients in different industries such as medical, health, digital advertising, legal, and real estate. He's been featured in Bloomberg, Success, Inc., and Entrepreneur as a top entrepreneur of all time. He's also the best-selling author and host of, I believe, the soon-to-be released, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, Built to Grow podcast show, which is going to be amazing. And his skills focus on building culture, systems, and teams that scale smart and galvanize growth. And today, those are a couple of the themes that I'm really excited to dig into. And I like him to teach us the most important levers. You know, wherever you're at in business, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a seasoned veteran, wherever you're at, we're going to talk about the levers that you have to pull to trigger sustainable growth. And I love this word because you see so many guys come and go, and we're going to dig deep in all these things: systems, metrics, thinking outside the box, hiring, leadership. I've got a lot of selfish questions of my own today. So without further ado, Chris, welcome to the call, my man.
Hey, man. Thank you so much, Vince. This is awesome. I'm psyched about this.
For sure. Yeah. Hey, why don't we just do you remember the reason why we all got together? I think that would be really impactful because, 10 strangers coming together, West Palm, Florida, we all knew of each other, but, just talk about the importance of that, meetup and like why you were in that room. Why did you want to be in a room with other successful entrepreneurs way back in 2007?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and you and I never talked about this, but I was in the offline world for 14 or so years prior to that. And I had just sold my main company. What year was that we got together? You had mentioned it. It was
2007 or 2008.
Gosh, holy crud. So I had only been online for a few years at that point. I had sold my first main offline company in 2004, which I had been in for over a decade. There was a chain of health clubs up and down the East Coast. And I was trying to leverage all of the strategies that I had learned and become very effective in offline, trying to do that online. And we built a tremendously great name in the health industry very, very quickly, because we were doing things that people were never doing back then online, right? We were asking for referrals. We were actually over delivering. We were, utilizing offline as well as online marketing to get people to our sites. I was doing so many unique things that it was opening the doors to a lot of opportunities for us. And one of the guys who put that event together was Ryan Lee, right? So Ryan reached out. I don't know why he had reached out to all of us initially, but I know he kind of wanted to brainstorm, which back then it was very popular to get people together and pick their brains as well as share great concepts, right? So he put together a group of guys, I believe, that were willing to literally be an open book. They were all growing rapidly, aggressive growth people, had their heart in the right place. They were all looking to reach out and touch more people, not necessarily, sell in the most unethical way possible, which you and I both know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are companies out there that do that. And it's very easy to do online, unfortunately, because people hide behind this shroud of anonymity that is the internet. But people like you and I and everybody else in that room, we were, unveil the curtains, open the curtains and actually show everybody exactly what's going on, and being completely open in the products and services that we were offering, and then trying to build a relationship with people. And I think that's why we all got into that room, which was very, very helpful for me, because it put me in touch with other folks. So a lot of them I knew, a lot of them I didn't know. Like you and I didn't know each other before we got into that room. And it was, it's been profound to be able to share as well as pick the brain of some of the best people out there. One of the biggest leverage points, we're going to talk about leverage points today. I think one of the biggest leverage points, which I wasn't even thinking about sharing today, is relationships, right? So this brings us to the most fundamental, leveraging relationships, growing and over delivering with peers, as well as customers and prospects and investors and everybody else in business, but over delivering to the point where they just want to give back has been one of the biggest levers that we could pull in growing and scaling companies.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we're going to talk about levers, and maybe kind of give an example of, like, when you go to the events these days, you never know who you're talking to. Everybody's doing something and everybody's crushing it, and everybody, kind of just maybe bring us up and help us understand when am I talking to a pretender and when am I talking to a pro? What are just some telltale signs just to help me be on my guard, because you could get sucked into conversations and everybody knows somebody and everybody's an agency and everybody's got a hook up. Everybody's a coach. Everybody's,
right.
You can get quickly, you got to know what you stand for, or else you can get quickly pulled down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So there's two rules of thumb, and I haven't been to an event in many, many years other than as a speaker. But it's very clear when you're on stage and where you're actually networking with people as a speaker, it's just super amplified, the bullshit that's out there. And excuse my language, but I could use much worse language when it comes to this. So number one, you want to make a list prior to going to an event of exactly who you want to talk to, right? You have a very limited number of time. You have a very limited amount of bandwidth. So the rate at which people can suck you in and take away your mental bandwidth and your time is infuriatingly massive. So you want to know exactly who you want to meet with, and preset meetings with those people if you possibly can. If you don't know them, you can't preset meetings, but then you go to them and you talk to them and you try to find out how you could give to that relationship first. Second is, here's a general rule of thumb. Guys who are rock stars, ladies who are rock stars in what they're doing, ask a tremendous number of questions, and they seek to understand you. People who are selling you, you could always tell the blank look in their eyes when they ask you a question. It's always trying to absorb the right information to pitch you, right? The people who are takers, go and they share with you what they're all about. Like I will go to an event, as a speaker, and prior to me getting on stage, often people don't know who the hell I am. And I will talk to people who are in the audience sometimes prior to this, and I'll just talk to them and I'll ask them all about their company and about their past and about their track record and what they're doing and what they hope to do and what their goals are and what their heart is all about. And they want to give and they want to talk about stuff, and that's terrific. I don't want to share with them anything about me until maybe they ask me, and then I'll just share surface level stuff, just enough so that they know that there's a connection between what they're trying to do and maybe what I'm doing. That's it.
Hey, that's great. Before we dig into the content, how about you just kind of give us an idea of what you're up to today? What keeps you busy, productive, and also I know we talked a lot about your business acumen, but I'd love to just have you talk about you're doing this in the context of more than just business. You have a family as well. And just let us know what a day looks like quickly, so we can understand that this is being built. All this is happening so that people can relate to you as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to go over a little bit later on, so I'll touch on it right now. My days kind of look like this. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, my 2 outer days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, they are almost identical every single week. And it's I have a ritual that I do in the morning to just get myself mentally prepared and physically prepared, working out and eating right and all that other kind of good stuff. But then I really start work. And by the way, that also includes time with my kids, getting them to school, all that kind of great stuff. And then at 9 o'clock, I come into my office, and Emily, who's been my assistant for over 17 years, has my numbers, my metrics for each one of the companies that I'm personally involved with. You said before that I've got four eight-figure companies. I've also got several smaller companies and that I'm growing right now. And every company that I have my hands in, whether I'm an owner, partner, or an investor, I get metrics for, and we have 3 to 5 key metrics for every company, so that I know after looking at those metrics every single morning that exactly if we are ahead of schedule or behind schedule. And those are really surface level things. And I can go through them from 9 o'clock to 9:30. I go through all my metrics and I write notes next to there. I call it my numbers and notes time. So I look at all my numbers. I write my notes down. And then from 9:30 to 12:30, I'm in team meetings. And it's back-to-back meetings. We're very, very strict on my time for that. The amount of time that I spend with each one of my leadership teams for each organization that I'm involved in varies from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on how quick they're growing right now, anything that they have coming up, all that kind of good stuff. But it's pretty standard. And during that time, we go over 3 things in every single meeting. I mean, there's a very strict structure to it so that everybody knows what to come prepared with. Nobody wastes time and everybody gets tremendous value out of it. But the 3 things that we go over are, what have you accomplished so far this week, right? Or so far since yesterday, whatever it is, depending on the day we're on. If it's Tuesday, it's really just what you accomplished yesterday. If it's later on in the week, it's what you have accomplished this week. And then it is, what are your top 5 for today? Like, what are you doing to move forward today? And we'll go over how people design their top 5 a little bit later on today, if you'd like to. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing that we go over is, you have a big rock in your path. If you do have a big rock in your path, describe it very quickly so that the team itself, we on the leadership team, we could use all of our core competencies to blow past that rock and get you moving forward, right? So that's 9 to 9:30 is our numbers and notes. 9:30 to 12:30 is my meetings. And then 12:30 to 3 o'clock, since I'm an employee of each one of my companies, I do what I'm good at for my core competency, and I push things forward. And then from 3 o'clock on, I'm with my kids and I'm with my family.
Oh, wait. So basically 9 to 3, Monday to Friday kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, not Monday to Friday. It's Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday. Wednesday, right in the center of the day, that's the day that I devote to consulting. So I have a consulting program called Club 28, where I'm literally working with companies that are doing a few $1 million a year to a few $1 billion a week, pretty large brands, where I am consulting with them from early in the morning till late at night. So that's a day where I work a lot.
That's great. I like how it's structured like that. The insights on how to structure those calls is brilliant. That's really helpful. So maybe we could dig into, one of the things I really need help with, and something that I've never been really trained on, is hiring. And, how do you find the right people in the first place? Maybe just talk about some do's and don'ts, and kind of an introduction to getting the right people so that they actually are able to execute on everything that's discussed on these calls.
Okay. So the right people, just in my experience, two ways we could define that. The right people are the right people for your organization, right, to move your passion forward, or the right people to do the technical stuff, right? So I'll talk about both because we need a marriage of both of those. First, the right people for the technical aspect of it. We, in every organization that I ever go into, if I'm working with a company in the advisory program, I look into the company and then we immediately build a process org chart, right? And a process org chart is a org chart that basically states, hey, here's who the top guy is. Maybe on your company, it's Vince Del Monte is on the top. And then underneath that, do you have an executive assistant who would be on the side of you? Underneath you, who is the next person that would report to you? Maybe it's a long line like this, and maybe you have your cold traffic people here and your social content people here and your copywriter here. Maybe your boxes along here. Everything that you need as far as boxes or departments inside your organization, whether that's an employee or a vendor, I don't care what it is, your process org chart is every single person or company that is required to get you to where you need to be as a company, not today, not 10 years from today, but actually 8 to 12 months from today. So we build a process org chart and we keep rebuilding it every year or every 6 months, depending on how quickly you're growing. But we build that and we design it, and then we know inside of each one of those boxes, we'll say, okay, well, Facebook Ad Manager is here. Then we list, the 5, 8, 10 different bullet points that person or team needs to accomplish in order to get you to the next level, right? So we are very clear. This page is extremely clear on what our team needs to look like in order to get us to the next level. Now, how do we attract the right people? That's the next part of this equation, right? So the next part of the equation is understanding that one of the biggest challenges I think that entrepreneurs make. There's a big difference, big mental shift, which we could talk about also, between entrepreneur and CEO. And I think to get most people to scale at a maximum pace, we have to take them out of the entrepreneurial mindset, put them into the CEO mindset, where they are not a implementer, but more of a visionary, an advisor, and somebody who actually can put together a team. To go to that level and to create the right team, we need a list of values, core values. Every single company needs a set of 5 to 8 core values. And that is the big mistake that so many companies make. What they do is they say, my team needs to come first, and then after we have a team, we can build values. The exact opposite is actually true when we're scaling a company. We build values. Like Vince Del Monte, personally, has core values. I know you, Vince, you have tremendous values, right? If we can distill that into a set of 5 to 8 values that are so clear to everybody who sees them, they're clear to you so that you could always make the right decisions. They're clear to every team member you ever bring on board, and there's a value to them in those values, right? There's a reason that they could connect with on those values. If your customers see those values, they should see the big win in it for them. If our prospects see those values, they should see the big win. So every single one of those values has to be worded in a way that everybody sees a big win in it for them. And I could share our values with you if you want to, but to be quite honest, every company needs those great values. And when you have that, those values then filter out first of all, they guide your decisions. Second of all, they attract A players. Third, they create a culture in your organization, and they give you a way to build a leadership team because everybody lives the values, and it builds credibility with your prospects and your customers because everything that you do in your marketing can always be reverted back to, oh, I know what they're going to do next because they are a giving company. They're going to give before they ask, right?
Yeah, I like that. Could you share a few, or what do you think, some of my values would be? Is it like you don't work on Sundays, or is it kind of, I think it would be great to hear a couple.
Yeah. So again, there's going to be, I'll share ours. And by the way, we have different values for every single company. So I'll share one of our sets of core values with you. But I would just warn you that there's going to be a lot of values in your life that don't make it onto this list because they're not applicable to business. Like if I don't work on Sundays, that's fine. We would reword that and say, we strive for balance in our lives. with every team member and every customer and every prospect and every product. I would reword it in a way that everybody who sees it sees a big win in it for them, right? Don't say we don't work on Sundays, because as far as I'm concerned, if I see that as a customer of yours, I see that I can't get customer support from you on Sundays.
Gotcha.
So you disregard me as a customer on Sundays. You have to be cautious about that. So some of our values are we give before we take, right? So every single one of our customers knows we will give more and more and more and more until I know that you're bought into the kind of content that I love to give. And then after that, we will ask for something in return, right? I will give more and more in our podcasts, or in our the content that we give out, or in anything that we give to our prospects. And then afterwards, we will marry some content to an offer, right? And then we'll give them a discount if they take advantage of it, right? So it's very clear. Another one is we value integrity over sales. Well, I will pass up a sale any day in any one of our companies if it's going to rip away our integrity as a company. It's not worth it for me. It hurts our brand, and everything is about building a stronger brand in our marketplace. We create long-term relationships with our customers and our vendors and ourselves. So every one of our team members knows that we are all about long-term relationships. I don't want a customer who is just going to come in and buy once from us and then hate us. Like, when somebody buys from us, I want to over-deliver, and I want them to feel like they're part of a family, and I want them to feel like we're going to give to them anytime we can within what they purchased. If they ask for more and more and more and more, then we're going to say, hey, get into this other program because we give you more and more and more and more of what you're asking for here, right? But we're going to over-deliver every single time. Our employees know that. Our customer service reps know that. Our customers, our vendors, everybody knows that. What's another one?
So these are public values that are like posted on the website, or is it kind of talks?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Every one of these, every one of the values that we have is out there. It's out there in what I say, whether I'm on stage or writing about it or doing a podcast or posting it on the website. Every one of our customers and prospects and investors or anybody will know what our values are, because we only want people who are at the higher level in our organizations who live by these values.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So we've got, so we track people by having the right values, and then maybe just kind of share some of the kind of tactical in terms of like finding these people and having them apply and auditioning them and the metrics you hold them accountable to. I think there's just, I don't know if there's a book or resource, if you can kind of just give us some specifics to maybe even reassure us like, hey, you can do this. Because I've always had this block. For some reason, it's always been something that's been perceived as hard. Maybe there's a fear of, do I have the ability to lead them? Do I hire people better than me? If they're better than me, what if they expose my vulnerabilities and weaknesses? Then I appear as an imposter. So I'm only going to hire people that are maybe half as good as me so I can maintain that control. There's just so much stuff that goes into hiring that I would love to just hear your thoughts on. I don't know where to start.
That's a lot in there. Holy crap.
Yeah. So, I mean, just wherever you want to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll start.
It's all going to be valuable. Yeah.
We never buy new. We always buy used, meaning it's my experience. It's cheaper to pay for people who are experienced and have a track record than to pay the price for a poor hire. And that doesn't mean, like you've said it multiple times so far today, hire people who are better than you. We hire people who are rock stars for the core competency that we need them to have in that box in the org chart. Like, I want rock stars there. I want people who literally earn their right to be part of my team. And when they earn their right to be part of my team and they live by our values, they're going to respect the hell out of you and everybody else, because everybody else has earned the right to be there also. So when we have team meetings, which again, we could go over if you'd like to, when we have team meetings, everybody there knows that everybody else there brings tremendous value for the box that they're in. Does that make sense? So we look for track records of success in our employees, in our partners, in our mentors, in our lives, in everything, right? With track records of success. And a track record of success does not mean, hey, if you're looking for a Facebook ad guy, you did great on this one launch That's not a track record. You did great on these 2 launches that I heard about. That's not a track record. If you've done great 3, 4, 5 times with similar projects that I'm hiring you for, or that I need to work with you for if you're a vendor, that's a track record. And you still need to monitor the right metrics to make sure that they are doing the right things and that they are living up to the right goals. But at least at this point, there's much less room for error, right? Because you're hiring somebody who already knows what they're doing, and they're going to bring suggestions to the table. Right? That's an empowered person that you're already bringing on board. And then we have to understand that as we are developing people, I put more time into people who I believe are emotionally intelligent, right? I put more time into people who I believe have a desire to grow and have the bandwidth to be able to grow. So there's a lot of people. So there's a rule that we live by, and I've been teaching this for over a decade. We don't judge people by what they think or they say, only by what they do, right? When I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing the right thing, I don't judge myself by what I think I'm going to do tomorrow or what I say I'm going to do tomorrow. I only judge myself by what I've done in the past, because what I've done in the past, the actions that I've done in the past when I've been exhausted after a long day, or when I've been put through the ringer, or when I'm in the trenches doing all the shit and I go into my default mode and automatic mode. That when I look at my track record there, then I could determine what I'm really going to default to. And leaders all know that. When they're talking to somebody, when you're initially hiring somebody, you don't listen to what they say they're going to do. Don't listen to what they think. Hey, Vince, I'm going to be the best employee you ever had. Holy crap. I'm going to read every single book. I'm going to this, I'm going to that, I'm going to the other thing. Hey, well, how many books have you read on this? Yeah. How many launches have you worked on? How many this? How many that? What kind of value did you bring to this, that, and the other thing? Give me specific instances. And because that's the track record we're looking for. And when we find an emotionally intelligent person like that who is really striving to grow at all times, and they understand, here's a second huge thing that we live by. We have a plaque on almost every single office that we have in our organizations, whether it's above the exit door, above the entrance door, or on people's desks. There's plaques all around that say, what's the best use of my time right now? Right? What is the best use of my time right now? When people literally live by that and they ask themselves that question, they can figure out what they need to do what actions they need to do to keep growing. That's an emotionally intelligent person who keeps taking those actions. And when I find that person, we put more time and effort into that, because the most lucrative time that I've ever spent in any business has been developing people.
Man, that's beautiful. So talk about this emotional intelligence. Like, what are some of the character traits? They're decisive, outcome focused. Like, and I love the distinguishing point you made about, essentially addition them, not, listen to them, because I think that you just kind of identified something that I do. I believe everybody's promises. I'm a believable guy. When you tell me something, I'll believe it. And I think that's cost me. So tell me a bit about the emotional intelligence you're looking for. Then, what you're going to say.
Hey, if it's okay, when I answer some of your questions, I'm going to answer what you're asking, but I'm also going to answer what I think you're asking, because
of course,
what I think you're asking here is different than the emotional intelligence part, right? If you're believing everybody's stuff, there's a solution to that. And I'd rather give you that solution as well as just what you're actually asking. So emotional intelligence, there are many tests out there. I believe the one that we use is 3QI or something like that. 3QI 2.2, I believe it is. But there's a lot of emotional intelligence tests out there, and you could utilize them as tools to help people to understand if they are emotional intelligent, because it actually helps them to understand if they're emotional intelligent, as well as the owner of the company to understand who on their team might be more emotionally intelligent than the next person. But these are tools, and to be quite honest, we use tools for what they are, and they are tools that give us a little bit of insight. They are not the freaking solution to everything. I would not say, oh my God, this guy got 100 on this test, we're going to invest everything into him. That's one tool. I go by my gut on almost everything, and my gut is based on facts. I look at the track records like I was talking about before. I look at the interview process. I look at when we do quarterly assessments on everybody in our organization, how do they rate as far as all the tasks that they were supposed to be accomplishing. Have they been accomplishing? Have they been meeting or exceeding our expectations? If they are meeting and exceeding our expectations, we put more time and effort into them. If they meet, exceed their expectations, plus they have a high IQ, I'll put more training into them to help them to find out, where is it that you want to grow in the organization? How can I help you get there? And then let's put more training into that, right? I had one more thing. I'm sorry, I lost it when I went there. But
Yeah. So we're talking about the emotional intelligence, and then
so you were talking about you believe a lot
oh
of
yeah,
people.
believe it. Yeah, yeah. You basically, there's no hiring process. Like, they don't earn the position. Essentially, they say that they can do it. You need a Band-Aid quickly to, temporarily stop the bleeding, but it ends up creating more. The wound never gets healed, and
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so it sucks because we call that the warm body syndrome, right? So, and I unfortunately, we all fall into this. We hire a warm body just to put them in a position because we need somebody fast in that position. And it ends up often hurting our culture, because if you do have other people on your team and they see that you've got an anchor on your, or a virus on your team, they see that you're allowing that person to be part of the team, and they no longer feel as like they're part of a powerful team. It sucks. So it behooves us to really put more time and effort into our hires, even if it's a vendor that we're bringing on board. So our hiring process is a draining process, right? There is no person who is hired because they went through one interview with us. They meet with the person that they might be answering to. They meet with an assistant. They meet with somebody who understands our culture and our values. They meet with me if they are, going to be a final hire in the company. Those interviews may be an hour long. They may be 2 hours long. They may be 3 hours long. We definitely put them like, not every one of my companies has a big team, but if we have a team, those people will go into a meeting with our team. They'll literally meet with their team. They'll have lunch with the team. The team will give me feedback on every person that is a potential hire, because they will be working with that team, right? It's important. Even if it's a video meeting, they may be part of one of our video meetings and see what kind of input they bring to the table.
Huh. Well, this is fascinating, because I'm just seeing all these opportunities for growth just from this standpoint. So we get the right people on board. Maybe kind of just to wrap up the conversation on hiring, talk about holding them accountable, what metrics they have to report in on, and then just like resources. Like, how do you, I think I need to really take a shift in amount of time I spend with, I can quickly see I don't spend enough time developing my team as a glaring gap in our ability to grow. So yeah, I just love to kind of hear about how to develop systems. We have systems to develop our customers to get results, but we don't have systems to develop our own employees. So maybe you kind of just touch on how to develop people and build that culture and have people feel like, wow, I finally found a home. This is incredible. And so maybe some tactical, simple things that anyone could implement sooner than later.
So our job as builders of teams is to set up an environment where everybody can be a rock star, right? So we cannot have that environment unless everybody is crystal clear on where the company's going and what their position is in that growth. So we use whiteboards. I use whiteboards with everything, right? I believe the bigger the whiteboard, the bigger the thinking, the bigger the results, right? So it is, and I also believe that using a whiteboard makes sure that every single person, no matter what kind of thinker they are, is crystal clear on everything. And I'll give you an example of one of our annual meetings, because an annual meeting in each one of my organizations is multiple days long. We have every team member involved in it. And that means vendors, that means employees, that means independent contractors. Everybody's part of this team meeting, because everybody who is part of getting us to our goal needs to be part of telling us all the tasks necessary to get us there, right? If we're missing somebody from that meeting, it's going to screw us up. So I'll give you an example. If I have a team meeting and, after we go through all the fun parts and we actually get to the actual work, there's a giant whiteboard in our war room. And we have a war room in each one of our organizations, which is where we plan everything. And on a whiteboard, I draw a circle on the top, and that circle is our target. And our target is normally a number, right? It is a revenue, reach, relationships number, something that is very, very, very clear and very systematically designed that I know if I reach that number, I'm going to reach the revenue goal that we have for that year. So for ease of implementation here, I'll just give you a revenue number. Let's say, for example, inside of that target is $25 million. Then underneath that, my second in that company is going to get up there and they may put down 3 or 4 or 5 small circles underneath that big circle, which is going to be our biggest revenue generators for the previous 12 months. So it might be this book series, this seminar series, this whatever it is. And they'll write down, this is the revenue that we made last year. This is our target for this year, right? Our target for this year is this. If we meet or exceed the revenue targets for each one of those products, we will meet or exceed the revenue target that we have at the top. And then everybody in the organization that has a hand in us reaching those targets will talk about the very first circle, and they will list every single task that needs to happen. And when we have everybody in the room helping us figure out those tasks, nothing falls through the cracks, right? So our Facebook guy might say, hey, last year all we did was, a media guy might say, hey, last year all we did was Facebook traffic for this one product or program. If we're going to grow the revenue there, I think we've maxed out Facebook. What we need to do is we need to implement more platforms, Google, Taboola, whatever other platforms we're going to bring on board. And then our tech guy might say, well, last time we did Google, we had these problems, so we're also going to have to do this, 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 and this. And then our customer support might say, last time we did that, we also had these problems, so we need solutions for these. So everybody gets on and we list every single task. And Emily, who's my assistant, will be the one who's writing every single task underneath that first circle, that first product that we need to get as a team in order to reach that first revenue goal. Because if we meet or exceed that revenue goal for each one of those targets, remember, for each one of those products, we will meet or exceed our $25 million goal at the top. And then we take after we've exhausted that entire process, which is going to be hours and hours long, every task is written down there. Every action that we have to take is written down there. Emily will take each one of those actions and put it onto a process map. And a process map is everybody's name on our team has a column, right? I have a column. Emily has a column. Jonathan has a column. Matt has a column. Everybody has a column, and every task that we agree to is put onto our column. So I may be left with 100 tasks for that year to accomplish. Ted may be left with 50 tasks, whatever. Our process map or a process sheet has every single person, every task is pulled from that big main whiteboard and systematized very clearly so that everybody takes ownership of an action or lots of actions. Now, throughout the whole course of the year, we distill that down into top 5 sheets, which I talked about before. So every single day, each person has to look at their column and take the top 5 most important actions, put them onto their top 5 sheet. And that's what I manage our team meetings with. Our team meetings are going over, what did you accomplish yesterday? What's your top 5 for today? And what's a big rock that we as a team might be able to help you push through? That make sense?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It sounds like it's at the first, it does sound kind of intimidating. Like I'm sure a lot of people thinking like, wow, this is serious stuff. But
it's so clarifying. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So sometimes the things that sound the most intimidating, if we literally just follow it, like when we I could go into a company and 3, 4, 5x its growth so quickly and simply in the next 12 months, simply by getting people clear on these things and holding them accountable to certain things inside of their company. That's how we go in and scale companies. When I go in our venture capital firm and we invest in a company and we scale it, that's how I scale those things. When I go in as an advisor, that's how we scale all these companies. Our average growth in each one of our, for the companies that we advise, is over 200% a year. It's because we're able to go in there and help them to tackle these tasks that seem overwhelming and then help them to systematize it, like an annual meeting with their team.
So
here's
that's
exactly how you do it. And here's
gotcha.
How you make money from it.
So essentially, I think a lot of people are simply skipping the annual meeting. They're basically going to the gym without a plan of how they're going to go about it. So, okay. So really it's just kind of getting clear on the goal, breaking it down, and now looking at what pieces are constraining revenue that will become the top 5. And then somebody's overseeing, supporting, and holding people accountable to that.
Well, you would be.
And
So
that's
the
what,
person who is running the actual leadership team meetings
okay.
is the head of the leadership teams. That's the CEO or the chairman of the board, whatever size company you have. However, if there are smaller teams, like let's say you have a team in the Philippines that is running all your data, running all your customer support, running something, there's a team leader there. That team leader would be part of your team leadership team meetings. However, he or she would then be having the same kind of meetings with their team underneath them.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So that gives us a nice picture of what it looks like from the top down, and I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people. All right, well, maybe just kind of wrap up the hiring conversation. What other things would you love our listeners to know when it comes to, hiring, developing people into leaders, and what is missing for most companies that's getting them stuck? I think there's probably a lot of listeners right now who are stuck in that $1 to $2 million a year, or $500,000 a year. And their ways of just, hustling and promotions have worked until now. And now they're not going further unless they take this conversation seriously and ask, am I willing to learn this and get through? What else is missing when it comes to executing all this?
I have something I want to share. It's almost exactly what you're asking for, but it's going to attack it from a different standpoint. So I'm going to ask for a little leeway on this. So it is another subset of clarity from the CEO standpoint, which helps understand who to hire, and it also helps your team to understand what they need to do, right? So it's the understanding that only a few things matter. So entrepreneurs normally don't get this. CEOs get this because entrepreneurs are trying to micromanage. CEOs are trying to figure out here's a real great example. Entrepreneurs look for revenue, right? It's the wrong fucking thing to look at. CEOs look to maximize market share, right? Big difference in the way we think. Big difference in the way we scale. Cuts away the great majority of obstacles that slow down our growth. So when we grow in, I get people on a regular basis say, hey, I have troubles developing a 7-figure company, or I have trouble developing 1 8-figure company. You've developed multiple of these companies in such a short time. How do you do this shit? And because we get very clear on our target. We get very clear on the processes we need, the people we need. We get very clear on managing these things. We understand who our enemy is, who's the number one company that we need to take down. We study their metrics. We study their numbers. Then we know the numbers that we need to meet or exceed in order to take that spot over, to take that market share over. That's what our team focuses on, right? So we have to understand that only a few things matter inside of our company. I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll give you 3 examples for 3 different clients of ours. Number one is a client that is great at driving traffic and branding, but they suck. They're horrible at building a list, customer support, upselling, monetizing customers. They suck at all the things that you and I just are second nature good at, right? But they're great at driving traffic and branding. They suck at all this other crap, yet they drive enough traffic to generate multiple 8 figures a week. Another example is a company that is great at building teams, and they're great at TV commercials, but they're horrible at all things related to the internet. Yet they built such a great team of experts that they generate over 8 figures a week too.
Jeez.
Third example, great at radio, right? Great at radio, which is something that I'm passionate about. Great at seminars, but horrible at continuity, horrible at online sales, horrible at any other traffic source other than radio. Horrible, yet they sell out over 200 seminars a month and they generate over 8 figures every single month. So we need to know, right, as CEOs, as leaders of our organization, we need to know 2 things. Number one, you are the guardian of your company, right? You are the guardian of your company. Everything that you do needs to be focused on growing your company. Number 2, you need to know the 1 or 2 things that you need to truly focus on, and that your team needs to truly focus on, that will be a game changer for your organization. When you know that, things become so much clearer.
Hey, Chris, I'd love to kind of put you on the spot here and maybe give a vision for a business coach or a fitness coach who's looking to scale that. Obviously service and results are at the core, but get them to think bigger. Like most coaches get stuck at, a couple hundred coaching clients, maybe, $500,000 to 2 million a year with coaches underneath them. But where could they think bigger? And then maybe for myself, I've got this idea. I'm kind of, I'm actually, I'll seed it right now. Here's what I'm thinking, Chris. I want to do an event for fitness business coaches, a free event, and invite them somewhere really cool. I'd pay for everything and just make it an awesome 2-day networking day. Basically what happened back in 2007 for us to learn from each other. But then I would also, see if there's anyone in that room who is interested in collaborating and growing one mastermind, because a lot of fitness business coaches, they have, a $5,000 to $10,000 program that lasts a couple weeks, but it's not scalable, and they don't have the group where all the magic happens and the networking and the big thinking happens. And I'm like, why don't I, instead of compete with these guys, become the competition and just collaborate? And that's just literally an invitation. But I don't know what you think of that idea, or what would you be doing if you were growing like a coaching program? How do you scale that when it's like directly rooted to people? They have to make money or they can't stay in the program. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a certain pace to it. You really are scaling clients and not customers. At least in my mind, that's how I see it. I know my questions are long, but
no, I got it. And I'm struggling to say, I'd like to share with your audience what our protege program used to look like, mm-hmm. Which grew so rapidly. And we had over 14,000 paying members in that community.
And what was that price point? Was that the $300 a month one?
Yeah. So that was, so there were two price points there, $97 a month and $297 per month. The great majority of people were in the $297 per month one, and the proteges paid $50,000 each to be a protege of ours, to own the non-exclusive rights the exclusive rights to their area, but the non-exclusive rights to the content. And I could explain that to you. However, I don't know that most of your audience would be in a position that would be easy to implement. So in the end, to grow any kind of a coaching business,
let's talk about that. Yeah,
the number one focus is exposure. So you need exposure, but here's the key: it's exposure to your target audience, the people who can not only get the most benefit from you, but can afford to go through your funnel, right? So we have had programs that, with a very few tweaks, we had a $39 program. The way we implemented that program, we sold millions of this $39 program. But then we took the exact same system of implementing it, and we sold it to a completely different industry, and we were able to sell a $2,997 program, right? And then we took that exact same system and we implemented it in a different industry, and the minimum ticket price for that is $250,000, right? It's the same exact system, same people, same processes that are implementing it, just aimed at a different industry, a different target audience that has deeper pockets and can utilize our services in a much bigger way. And we aimed it there. So same amount of effort on our end. Now, instead of selling $39 ebooks, we could use the exact same products to sell $250,000 processes. So you have to understand your target audience, mm-hmm. and then you have to have the greatest exposure possible in that target audience. Now, exposure, in my opinion, this is not the opinion of everybody, in my opinion, should be highly credible exposure, right? You emphasize your track record. You show people the benefits in it for them. It is not just sell. It's give first, so that people can actually get value from a little bit about what you're doing. Because when we do that, we develop customers from prospects, right? Which means this. It doesn't mean that prospects are always turning into customers, but prospects are either turning into customers or they're turning into cheerleaders for us that are going out there and pitching us because we have given them so much great stuff.
That's great. So just to kind of flush this exposure out, are you talking about a funnel that essentially brings people in on a low dollar thing that moves them into a high dollar thing, or are you talking about pure customer acquisition right now?
No. So funnel might be the appropriate word to use for it, but it's not in the most traditional sense. I'm talking about exposure being growing your brand,
Mm.
and growing your brand in a way that increases your reach, the number of people that you reach. So our mission since the day I started my very first business has always been to reach out and touch the greatest number of people possible. Right. And when I was a personal trainer, it was help the greatest number of people possible with our workouts, our programs in that industry, and our diets. And then we went into the health club industry, helped the greatest number of people there. And then the books came out and the TV show came out. And then I got into the venture capital firm and into growing businesses in multiple industries, always help the greatest number of people possible. In the consulting program, I only take on honest, ethical, moral, legal companies that really want to grow and can handle that growth, so that my time with them now helps all of their customers and their prospects, right? So my time is now amplified and I could increase my reach through their products.
Hey, maybe kind of give me an insight for myself. So last year I invested into a podcast guy who's helping me get on better quality shows for more exposure. I speak at events, writing a next book, is another idea. My muscle building business, I think I was really good at just being prolific with new programs. Like I have the biggest muscle building library of anybody I know. I just pumped out products. So yeah, kind of give me some specifics. Is that what you're talking about? If we're strategizing on like what's the lever Vinny should pull
So
to get
that's
more exposure this year?
So that would be, so if we were looking for exposure, we would look at, in the example that you just gave, interviews for podcasts, your private podcasts where you just literally give great content. And they may be 2 to 3 different shows, one aimed at, marriage, one aimed at money, each one of your M's might have a different show under your brand, so that people, know that Monday is all about marriage, Tuesday is all about money, and then you'd have an M for every day of the week. And then stage would be another one, right? So you would have all these different platforms and here's the key, every platform would have to synergistically build all your other platforms. So your Instagram would have to also build your YouTube. Your YouTube would have to also build your Facebook. Your Facebook would also have to help drive traffic to your events. And your events, if you're on other people's stages, would have to help to fill your private events, right? So maybe you run quarterly events at whatever, $5,000 a pop, or I don't know what price point your audience is.
Yeah, we do. We get together, our mastermind gets together every 90 days, Chris, and that's actually been the driver for us, having more people just test drive it. So I've sensed, once our newborn is a little older and I can start getting on the road a bit more, that I think is going to be a lever I pull strongly, because when I get in front of people, those have been my biggest revenue days. So I'm like, why am I not just doing this once a week? It's just a conflict with the young ones right now.
Yeah, well, then you and I partner together, and I'll take over you and I'll collaborate on all the money part, and we will just deliver. I'll do the time stuff. My kids are older. As long as I can do it during my regular time frame, we'll build the hell out of that. So anyway,
that's great. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So that's the concept initially would be to grow your exposure. Make sure that you have many different platforms for exposure, all driving them into something that gives them the ability to taste test you. Like we try to drive people to we just came out with a survey, which helps entrepreneurs to figure out what is broken inside of their company at the level they're at right now. And they go through this test that may take 5 to 8 minutes to go through, and it'll literally give them a score and show them how to fix that piece of the puzzle. And they could keep taking that test. It's something that we've been using internally for years. Now we're just making it available to everybody online, and they could take it every quarter or something like that to see what's broken and what they really need to focus on. It's huge. But if we're able to drive people from our podcasts or whatever your platform is to a tool like that, or a giveaway that, like, I'll tell you and your listeners, if they go to my site, they go down to the bottom of the page, they could get, if figuring out what to measure in your company is a big deal, go down to the bottom and just opt in down there, and you'll be able to see what the fastest growing companies measure, right? And it's vague, because it needs to show you, here's how you need to think to figure out what to measure inside of your particular company. Don't try to measure everything that everybody else is measuring. It'll screw you up massively. Here's how to figure out what you should be measuring, right? And if you go down there, and it's completely free. So that's how we give, and then we bring them to an area where we could give a lot more. And then from there, we could give content, and anybody who loves our content will jump on board to either one of our boot camps or into the one-on-one consulting or into something else that we offer.
There's been so much like great information here. And at this point, I start to can feel a little bit of, wow, this is outstanding. But that overwhelm starts to creep in. So I'd love to kind of shift to a conversation. I know you have a keynote talk called How to Transcend Time. And I'd love to talk about steps to getting crystal clear on the number one most vital use of our listeners' time. You know, where do they put their focus? Where do they put their money to see a year's worth of growth? Because I think, you know, as a business coach, Chris, one of the biggest things I see is a missequence of steps. And as an athlete, I feel it's really helped me because I understand that everything has to go through a process and requires progress. But I think a lot of people just get so overwhelmed. They launch 3 shows in a week. They start going on stages. The next thing they know, I recently talked to an entrepreneur. He just had a $70,000 month. And he said, I sat down to do an Instagram post today and I came up blank and I have no money in my bank account and I have no idea where it all went.
Yeah.
So people, he doesn't know, like, what do I do next? Do I focus on making more money? Is it what's like what you kind of touched on, what's broken? So, yeah, I would love to hear just kind of land the plane here to help people identify what can I take from this conversation that's specific to my business so that I know everyone's in a different situation, but yeah, how do we kind of make some headway here? What are some next steps? Where do I need to be focusing on now before, you know, maybe I'm not ready for 3 shows right now, but how do I figure out what I am ready for and what I need to focus my time and money on and my focus on?
So, easy to answer.
Okay. I love that. I can breathe better now.
Yeah, easy to answer, hard to be specific about. And I hate to say that. I'm sorry. It's going to be, it gets frustrating for listeners. Here's the deal. And the reason why it gets frustrating is because I'm not selling anything. I don't want you to like, here's the fucking solution. Holy shit.
Yeah. Oh, no problem.
The deal is, your number one goal in business is to grow. It is a mistake for you to believe that your number one focus is to do anything other than to freaking grow your company. We can best track growth with numbers. Your number one focus should be on growing your revenue because people vote with their dollars, right? It doesn't mean we need a million more sales today. We may just need, 50 more sales today, but they have to stick, right? So we have to over deliver. We have to give, right? So it's understanding bottom line. The second thing is when we're growing revenue, it's not gross revenue that I care as much about as profit. Like I care far more about the profit that comes in because when I have profit, I could invest more in growing the company. I could take more out and reward myself. I could reward my employees with it. I could invest in knowledge. I could invest in mentors who can collapse my time frame and help us to achieve more in the next 12 months than most companies could achieve in the next 10 years, right? That's important shit. You can't do that with gross revenue. You can only do that with profit. And then we have to understand that the number one killer of scale, and I hesitate to say this because there's a lot of killers of scale. Mm-hmm. Number one killer of scale, I believe, is that people get confused and they measure the wrong things, especially entrepreneurs as opposed to the CEO mindset. They measure the wrong things. Most entrepreneurs measure numbers. We CEOs and companies that scale fast always measure actions. So when we talked before, I said, hey, we do everything with these whiteboards. And on the whiteboard, we put a freaking number at the top. The example I gave you was $25 million. But that's not what we track every day in our teams. We grudgingly just spent so much time listing every single action. That was the secret. That's the part that everybody skips. And then when you have all those actions and people take ownership of them, then we could measure the actual actions that moved us towards the number that we need to hit. when you are growing a company and you could get it down to measuring actions, now you could encourage people to take the actions that, make the greatest impact on our results. So, so my last word of wisdom, I guess, when it comes to this, to answer your question, would be, hey, if somebody is listening to this and they're a little bit overwhelmed, I would say, hey, the greatest use of your time today, what is the best use of my time right now? The greatest use of your time right now would be to figure out what actions, actually, what are the top 1 to 2 things that make the biggest difference in your business to drive your growth, to move the needle the most? And then what are the actions that I need to take or that my team needs to take in order to get us there?
Huh. That's super powerful. It really does get simple when you talk about it in that context.
Yeah. So if you want to develop your exposure, right? We're just talking about that. We would have to map out what your end result would look like. Like, what's your end result look like in 12 months? Like, how many stages are you on? How many podcasts are you doing? Now, your newborn is not going to be ready for you yet to leave the house yet. But then you're going to have this golden period, which I went through this exact same thing. I want to be there for my newborn, right? Then there's a time period where it's okay if I'm out of the house and on the road a little bit. And when I come back home, they just accept me with open arms, right? But that's a short-lived time, but I could maximize that time greatly. And then there's going to be a time where you're going to be out of the house and you're going to come back and it's going to take them a day to give you hugs because daddy's been gone for a week, right? Big, horrible.
What age does that kick in?
Bring you to tears.
When does that kick in, Chris?
Geez, I'd have to think about when it happened, but I think it was when my son was maybe 5 or 6 years old, something like that. And I came home I was doing 4 to 7 gigs a month. And I came home and it took like a day for him to run into my arms and give me the love that we were so used to. And I immediately said, you know what, the model's changing. This is it. I'm not accepting this in my life. And that's okay because we were able to change the model and do a lot more from the house.
I would love to maybe even just shift, like there's so much more, I think, value we can even learn from you, having been around a lot of, some of these companies, you're likely getting to know a lot of these people on an intimate level as well. How do you not implode? How do you build this? I find like this is maybe an identity conversation, but, we talk so much about, and we talked about values today already. I think that's tremendous that you led with that. And so many men especially are defined by metrics. And, what I've learned is that this rich line is always moving. How do you manage that unquenchable thirst for more? And, how do you personally find a sense of peace that, you get a bill from the tax man and you're like, holy crap. And you don't like freak out. It's like, hey, but, I'm not defined by my numbers. We're doing some great stuff. I'd just love you to speak into the men's life right now and help us pursue this without this, dream of just making our identity based around status and possessions and favor versus, I don't know, service maybe, or fulfillment or meaning or purpose. And I think a lot of us are chasing the wrong metrics, if you will. Yeah. And it becomes a shell game because eventually, if that's what you're building your life upon, it can crack at any second and devastations can occur personally and all sorts of other areas of life.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but I will tell you that I live by, I want to lead by example for those around me. Most importantly, right? And you look at this like this concentric circle, the people that I want to affect the most with my life and my actions. Well, me, I want to feel satisfied, my kids, definitely. And then family, and then friends, and then, everybody around me who sees me, and then my customers and my prospects. And it just keeps going on and on and on to partners and investors and everybody else. I want to lead by example. So if that means that I work super hard to grow things, and then I live the kind of life that is balanced and allows me to show my kids and everybody else that I'm off right now. right? I'm with you right now. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not doing any of this other crazy stuff. I was just on vacation with my kids. I just got back last week, I think it was. And there was I wasn't checking emails. I had a couple of meetings in the morning before they woke up just to check in with my team, make sure everything was okay. That was it. Like, I was done. The rest of the day I was completely devoted to them. And they see that. And they see that I can manage other people and manage these businesses that other people rely on for their livelihoods. They see that I could do that and still enjoy my life with them. And they see what's important in life. And I don't know that I feel like I'm the right one to define what's important to everybody's life, but at least in my life, what's important is family and doing right for a lot of things and growing things. If I'm not growing my companies and the companies that I'm associated with, then I feel kind of crappy on the inside, and it shows.
That's great. Well, thanks for being honest. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Hey, we've touched on a lot of things here. So maybe we could just wrap up a bit on more of like a personal note. In this process of you building these companies, like, who do you want to be known for in terms of outside of growing the businesses? Like, what are the character traits that you're not willing to sacrifice in the process for the growth? And then maybe a word to the listeners on what the values that they need to continue to grow without sacrificing something that it's going to cost them more than the gain that they get in exchange.
Honest, ethical, moral, legal. Those are things that I hold dear in each one of our companies. Also, we judge ourselves by our actions, which is going back to something that I said before. So I believe that it's important to understand that and then value what we bring to the world and what we bring to our companies and what we bring to our employees and what we bring to our families and ourselves by the daily actions that we take, right? So we judge ourselves by our daily actions. Again, not by what we think we're going to do or what we say we're going to do, but by what we actually do. Does that answer the question, or did I?
No, it is the daily actions. It's kind of essentially like who you are when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially the definition of character. It's, most people I find, especially with social media now, they use language to cover up lifestyle.
Oh, wow. Super interesting.
Right. They know. Here's the problem. What I've found is that people don't understand that not everybody's acceptance is a blessing, and not everybody's validation is valuable. And what the conversation that I'm having a lot these days is that people will define their identity by other people's insecurities.
Wow, that's
so
deep.
You look at a guy. I'm not picking on Gary Vee, but he's an easy one to kind of pinpoint because he's so out there. But he's a guy that tells you to hustle, work long days. Well, if I don't do that, then in his eyes, I'm a failure. But likely that value for him is actually rooted in an insecurity, regardless of what he says.
Right.
I put money. I'll bet my house on that. And that's how we build our lives, around other people's insecurities of what they say in the name of impact is the way that you'll be happy and fulfilled. And I think it takes a lot of people off course.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we have to put so much time and effort into figuring out what our personal values are before we ever think about our business values. Our business values have to be rooted in what we personally are aimed at in our life. He is a great example for that, but there's a lot of them. I mean, you and I could both name people who are friends of ours who have huge podcasts or great shows out there who say that they work their asses off. Some of them do, and many of them, you and I probably had dinner with. I know I have, and they don't. I know they don't. But that is what they portray. The ones that do work their asses off are definitely, I believe you're right, insecure about a lot of things. They're doing that because they are seriously afraid, because they came from massive poverty, and that makes them happy. But when we know our values, what makes us actually happy, and what we're willing to really base our lives on, then it gives us the ability to say, well, that fits in our life, but only this much. This other thing fits really, like leaving the office at 3:00 on most days fits my life a lot better because I get a chance to be with my kids, my family. That is what is most important to me.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I sense you really believe that. And that's fantastic because they're the kids, you know how they spell love, right? Time. That's one out of my parents' playbook. So they did just celebrated 43 years. So they're reminding me and my brothers constantly, you guys think you guys just ended up like this by accident? You know how much time we spent with you when you were younger? And it's a great reminder because my brothers and I did, we obviously got our issues too, but my parents were highly intentional and highly engaged in our lives.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and now I'm watching them do it with my kids, their grandchildren. I'm like, wow. And but they've made sacrifices, in other areas of their lives. My dad could have, he was a speaker as well, and I think he could have pursued that a lot more. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I've seen that sacrifices are required to gain, and you have to decide what your values are to know what you want to gain and ensure everyone around you is on the same page. Because anyway, that's you can kind of probably get a bit of peace in my heart right now is what I'm kind of living through too. So, hey, Chris, this has been fascinating, man. I'd love just to ask you personally, what are you looking forward to these days? And, what's getting you up in the morning super excited?
Well, from a business standpoint, I've got my hands on a bunch of different entities. However, what is most exciting for me right now is we're building the podcast show like you were talking about before. So I spend more of my mental bandwidth on planning that out, on filming shows that I believe are really valuable to people, to my target audience, people who are already have a little bit of momentum in business and have the ability to scale. It's not for beginners, somebody who's just getting started. I don't film anything related to that because I think they have their own set of struggles that we all went through that they have to get through and have a breakthrough prior to really enjoying some momentum. But once they get a little bit of momentum, this kind of stuff helps them to go to the next level. And that excites the heck out of me. So from a business standpoint, it's that. From a personal standpoint, I have a lot of focuses when it comes to my personal health, my family, there's a lot of good stuff. That would be a whole podcast in and of itself.
Well, what's your goal for the podcast? Is it to create value for your followers, or I'd love to just hear your thoughts on why you decided on. I know whatever you do, you go full tilt. So why the podcast?
Well, we have Club 28, which is the consulting program. And that's where I personally work with some companies to help them scale. And a long time ago, that was filled just by my seminars where I'd go out and I'd speak. I'd give people a lot of really great content. And then the people who were really hooked on it, we would engage with them and eventually they would get into the program. It's not a cheap program, but it is something that gives me the ability to truly scale somebody's company very, very quickly. But once my kids became a certain age, like we were talking about before, I stopped all those seminars. Like I didn't accept, like I was doing 4 to 7 gigs a month. It was very easy for me to funnel people into memberships, our online communities, and Club 28. Then when I changed that model, we did some webinars. I'm not a big fan of webinars. So this new podcast series gives me the ability to go out there in a much grander way, increase our exposure for the brand, and bring people in and give them a lot of different tips and tricks and strategies that we are using to shortcut our success curve and really scale companies with the hopes that they will come in, grab more information from us on the website, see if that's really great for them. And if it is great for them, then eventually that will be the new lead gen for Club 28. Well, Club 28 is just 28 companies that I work with over the course of the year. That's hence the name, right? So right now we've got 20 companies in there, right? In the past, we had a waiting list to get into that. Now we've got 8 spots that I've never had that before. So the podcast is our way to increase our exposure and bring in really good quality companies to be able to bring, get people into that funnel.
Is that your $50K a year program or $100K a year program?
That is three levels. 5K a month is the minimum. There's 5K, 10K, and $25,000 per month, depending on the size of the company and the needs that they need. So the great majority of people
awesome.
the great majority of people come in at 5K a month in the beginning, and we grow them. And to be honest, the average length of time that somebody is with us is 4+ years. Although it's a month-to-month program, if there's any time that anybody feels like they're not getting 10 times the value, they could stop. We've only had a handful of companies over the 10 years that I've been doing this stop before they've been with us for years, because they just keep scaling. The ones who exit are normally the ones who want to sell, and we get them to the point where they are sellable, and we help them sell. And then they're out and there's no more company. So we talk to them. I talk to them as friends for a while, help them figure out their next level. And then we kick them the heck out, because I only want people in here. I only want brands in here that we could literally grow. We could experience exponential growth with, just have them have some fun.
Gotcha. Well, that's great. Hey, Chris, this has been fantastic, man. Really eye-opening. It's just spotting all these opportunities for growth with my own work and things that I can share with students that are stuck in certain areas. So, Chris, I can't thank you enough for your time and for your wisdom and for the example you are being and not talking about as many people do. So I just love to close out and let the listeners know where they can learn more about you, connect with you on anything, and just tap into what you're doing. And that would be great.
Yeah, so they could go to the site. There's two different URLs, chrisguerriero.com. That's Chris Guerriero, GUERRIERO.com. If you could put a link someplace, or people could
We'll
just
put that in this. We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, or builttogrowshow.com. That's where the podcast will be hosted. Right now, it's just a page where they could download some stuff, and then we'll be posting all of our podcasts right there.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Chris, thank you so much on behalf of all the M5 men listening and myself. Man, we appreciate you a lot, man, and you're such a great example, and you've just opened my mind up to how much room there is for improvement today. So we like to just close off with a little thing that we call pay it forward, and this is where we just ask our listeners to think of one person, and we just want to encourage you to bless that person today. And whoever you're thinking of right now, I'm sure you're thinking of somebody who would love to hear from Chris's experience and insights and teachings today. And just take a screenshot of this episode and attach the link to the link in iTunes so that they can listen to it directly. And if you like, even screen share it on Instagram and tag me and drop a little one-liner that Chris dropped, and then I can reshare it, and that's going to create even more visibility and help more people say, yeah, this is the podcast I'm going to listen to today. So really the reason we do this, guys, is not just to increase visibility for our show, but to help you become a go-giver and to realize that when you put other people first, then cool things happen. And just hook somebody up. Take a moment out of your day. I find most people are depressed and anxious because they're just so self-absorbed in their own world. And one of the quickest ways to get out of depression is by sharing and blessing somebody else. So do that right now, and we would appreciate it a lot. And I think that's it. Hey, Chris, thanks once again for joining us today, man.
Hey, thanks, Vince. And thank you, everybody else who's been part of the show.
All right, guys, have a great day.